Hello, Azeroth, and welcome to a more technical explanation of what the battle for Stromgarde is about. Designed for teams of 20 to 40 players. In order to make the battle for Stromgarde a player-versus-player scenario, the following steps were carried out. Intense player involvement with zero encouragement for taking a selfish approach to the battle. Play as a team. Players should feel like the battle has many stages and that it's in constant progress towards the next step. The final push should feel like engaging the boss of a raid tier, a battle against the clock and the fight mechanics instead of the usual. Just use defensives when the boss leaps into the air and keep damaging the boss down until it hits 0 health. Snowball should not be easy to achieve, but rather a comeback. In order to make this possible, the amount of resources that a faction wins with each consecutive event won are reduced by 15%. And whenever a faction reaches 55 total deaths, all players from that faction gain 18% versatility for 4 minutes. After being defeated in the battle for Stromgarde, your spirit will be released in the Great Hall by default. The amount of time a player will need to wait in order to respawn is 10 seconds. However, as the battle for Stromgarde unfolds, this time will increase. 1 second every 2 minutes to be exact. Base and units. Buildings are no longer upgradable, and units will no longer be troops, but instead NPCs that give special buffs to the entire raid, which are lost upon dying, but they will be reapplied whenever a player gets back to the Great Hall. This building will work as the only spawning zone in the entire field of battle, and while inside, players will gain a stacking buff that increases all stats by 3%, and it goes up to 12%. While at maximum stacks, players will receive 8% less damage from all sources, and their mounted movement speed is increased by 15%. Lost on Dying. Trollbane/Agoric Hearthstone. All players will receive this item from the start. It has a 2-minute CD, 2.5 seconds cast time, and it can be upgraded for several benefits. Using this Hearthstone will teleport players to their respective Great Hall. Frontline, backline, and supports. Tanks will receive 30% increased health. They take 30% less damage from all sources, and they unwillingly redirect 50% of all damage done to up to 5 nearby allies to them, 10 yards. Increased to 70% when above the 80% health threshold. This mechanic of redirecting the damage is disabled inside the enemy base. Melee DPS will have 10% movement speed increased, and they cannot go under 80% mass. Roots would still apply. 10% increased health and 15% versatility. Range DPS will have 15% increased critical strike chance, and their critical damage deals 20% more damage than usual. This 20% crit damage bonus is increased further when their target is below 20% health. Up to 40% more crit damage, and every time a ranged DPS critical strikes a player below 20% health, they will deal an additional 0.5% of the target's max health as additional unavoidable damage. All healing and absorption done by healers will be increased by 15% for every 25% missing mana, and they will emit a pulse of healing in all directions once every 20% mana wasted. This pulse heals all friendly players in 18 yards for 3% of their max health. Affected by intellect, mastery, versatility, and healing increase buffs, such as the mana interaction mentioned before. Barracks. This building will allow players to enlist the following units. Bloodguard/Marshal, Headhunter/Gilnean Rifleman, Tauren Earthshaker/Exarch Paladin. Can only have one of each unit, and they will stay at base to defend your commander. Each unit costs 125 lumber and 100 Oregon. The BG/Marshal unit will grant players a 10% haste buff, the HH/GR 10% crit chance instead, and last but not least the TE/EP will grant the raid a 10% mastery buff. These buffs have a 10 minutes duration. Armory. The armory will open 1 minute after the gates are open. Here, players can individually invest their resources in order to gain multiple benefits that will help them in many diverse ways. Some of them are faster recovery. Using your Hearthstone will instantly heal you for 40% max health and increase the mounted movement speed bonus by an additional 10% for 1.5 minutes. Bolstered. After leaving the Great Hall, Gain an additional 4% stat bonus and 2% extra less damage taken. Ready for battle. Leaving the Great Hall grants the player 9% versatility, which decays over 3 minutes. Group Recall. Casting your Hearthstone will create a ring around you that will teleport players with you. It can take up to 4 other allies. If used this way, or at least 2 other allies were teleported with you, your own personal Hearthstone will have a 4-minute CD instead. For obvious reasons, your Hearthstone can only be used out of combat. Hall Sweet Hall. Entering the Great Hall grants the player food buff, 5% attack power, 5% intellect, and 5% stamina. Horn of Earthy. Whenever 3, 20v20/6, 40v40, friendly players in a 30 yards range around you fall below 40% health, the player and another 2 or 5 allies can trigger this. Sound the horn of battle to call for a retreat, increasing your and your allies' movement speed by 25% for 8 seconds. Also becoming immune to roots and slows. 40 seconds CD. 30 yards range. Each time you or an ally drops below 40%, you gain a stack. At 3 or 6 stacks, the Horn of Erethy will trigger. That's how it works. Each individual player can only add 1 stack once every 1 minute. Flare. Shoot a flare into the sky, which all allies can see from approximately 700 yards away, and it will be located in the raid's minimap. Any player that moves towards the direction from where the flare was shot, it will gain 100% movement speed out of combat, 20% while in combat, and 10% increased mounted movement speed. Stacks with other similar effects. 2 charges, 30 seconds CD per charge. The flare lasts for 8 seconds. Medical bandages. These can be used onto yourself or any friendly player in a 5 yards distance, and heals the player for 40% of their missing health over a 5-second channel. 3 uses. Can only be used out of combat. Scroll of the Second Chance. Open up a portal to your fortress gates. It takes 3 seconds to cast it and lasts for 5 seconds. It can only be used by a total of 5, 20v20/10 players, 40v40. Taking damage will interrupt the cast, and it's consumed when used. Players can use this portal while in combat as well. Live Another Day. Using your Hearthstone below 20% health cleanses you from all harmful effects, pacifies you, and teleports you back to your Great Hall after 3 seconds. This will immediately trigger whenever you hit 8% health. 5-minute CD. Defilers/Arethyr Whistle. Sound the whistle in a call for reinforcements. Any player at 450 yards away can hear the whistle regardless their faction. Up to 4, 20v20/9, 40v40. Other players around the player who use the whistle, that player included, will gain a debuff called Awaiting for Reinforcements, which lasts for 1 minute, and it will heal the marked players for 5% of their max health for each ally that arrives 20 yards close to each player, but does not have the debuff on them. For minute CD, regarding the amount of upgrades a player can acquire and keep, the number will be a total of 2 active items and 2 passive increases of their choice. These useful benefits from the armory cost 25 lumber and 25 ore each. Plus trinkets. There are numerous available trinkets for players to buy inside this battleground, and they can be upgraded for higher item levels. In order to increase the item level of these trinkets, you will need honor points. The reasons behind these unique trinkets are mainly 2. One is to allow players that yet don't have a PvP trinket to have a few strong options as well, and the other reason is to let players have more options to combine their personal trinkets with these brand new Erethy-related ones, or even have 2 of these equipped for the battle. If you're considered a newcomer or an undergeared player, you'll get 1 of these for free each time you join the battle for Stromgarde. Trinkets cost 200 honor points, and they can be upgraded 5 times for 50 honors each. Argorok/Stromgarde Medallion. Versatility and health. Reduces the duration of CC effects on you by 33%. Does not stack with other similar effects. Activate to become immune to all types of crowd control effects for 3 seconds. Can be used while stunned or polymorphed. And gain a shield for 9% of your max health when being struck by any spell/ability that would have normally stunned you or made you lose control of your character. Can stack the shield just twice. The shield lasts for 4 seconds and it will restore 100% of the shield remaining value as health when it expires. 1.5 minute CD. Argorok/Stromgarde Insignia. Versatility and health. While crowd-controlled, you heal yourself and one nearby ally for 1% of your respective missing health per second. Whenever you get stunned or crowd-controlled, you take 30% decreased damage from all sources for the next 3.5 seconds. 20 seconds inner cooldown. Activate the insignia in order to either increase the 30% value up to 65% or have an active 35% reduced damage taken buff for the next 3.5 seconds. 3.5 minutes active CD. Can be activated while stunned. Book of Arethyr/Tome of Honor. 8% increased health. Pledge yourself to an ally for the next 4 minutes. That ally will take 6% decreased damage while close to you, and each time they get stunned for more than 1 second, they're healed for 16% of their missing health. This has a 12 seconds inner cooldown. Whenever your sworn ally is brought below 25% health, you heal them for 5% of their missing health each second for the next 6 seconds. 5 minutes inner cooldown. The trinket itself has a 1 minute cooldown. 25 yards range. Elemental Stone. 2% increased health and intellect. Increases movement speed by 4%. Reduces damage taken by 4%. Restores 4% max health and mana every 10 seconds and increases your damage done by 4%. In order to sustain these benefits the elements provide, your mana costs are increased by 20% at all times, and whenever you drop below 15% of your maximum mana, the elements will restore 70% of your maximum mana over 7 seconds. If the elements restore your mana in this way, the passive benefits will remain dormant for 60 seconds. Wyvern Tusk/Griffin Feather. 2.5% increased health and mastery. Whenever you, an ally, or an enemy within 30 yards falls below 35% health, grants you and up to 4 nearby allies 60% increased movement speed that decays over 4 seconds. During this time, your movement speed cannot go under 90%. Each unique player can't benefit from this trinket more than once in 15 seconds. Increases movement speed by 9% for you and 4 other allies within 25 yards range. Stacks up to 5 times. Active. Use this trinket in order to share the passive movement speed increase to a total of 10 players instead of 4 for the next 10 seconds and within 40 yards range. 1.5 minutes cooldown. Witherbark Mojo Juju. Agility, strength, and mastery. Grants immunity to all movement impairing effects and empowers you with voodoo, increasing size by 40%, and you leech 2% max health from up to 5 enemies in a 12 yards radius per second, lasting for 5 seconds. If you heal less than 21% of your max health with this, you will get stunned for 3 seconds after the effect expires. But if you heal more than 28% health with this trinket, you will gain 2.5% permanent increased health, lost upon dying, and it stacks up to 5 times. 2.5 minute CD. Tank players receive 30% more healing from this trinket. Boulder Fist Figurine, Agility, and Strength. Above 80% health you take 10% reduced damage. Below 80% health you deal 10% increased damage. When you're brought below 35% health, you deal 40% increased physical damage for 6 seconds, on top of the previous 10%. 1.5 minute CD. While empowered by the Ogre Might, you cannot be slowed nor rooted. Dry Whisker Candle. Intellect. Light the candle for 7 seconds. During this time, 10% of all damage you do with spells is converted into mana and a shield. When the candle goes out, you consume any shield generated in order to gain 3% spell power per 5% of your max mana, equal to shield amounts. The spell power bonus lasts for 14 seconds. 2 minutes CD. Shield amount equal to 40% max mana consumes that shield to gain 24% spell power. You don't need to have an active shield in order to gain the spell power at the end, meaning that taking damage won't affect the amount of spell power gained. Unstable Azerite Orb. Intellect and Agility. Consumes 3% of your maximum mana every 6 seconds, but increases your damage done by 6% at all times. Casting a healing or useful spell or ability onto yourself or an ally player will grant you a stack of Azerite Flames for the next 6 seconds, which increases your damage done by 6%, stacks up to 5 times. The Azerite Orb is unstable, so each time it consumes your mana, it will also consume 1 stack of Azerite Flames. If you consume a stack of Azerite Flames, you gain 1 stack of Stabilized Flames, which increases your healing done by 3% per stack and can stack up to 5 times, lasting for 8 seconds. Active. Use the Azerite Orb in order to restore up to 4 nearby allies 3% of their maximum mana per each stack of Azerite Flames you have. 6 minutes CD reduced by 3 seconds each time you stack Azerite Flames. 25 yards range. Flask of King's Blood. Versatility. Increases your max health by 2.5% per nearby ally, up to 4. Consume the flask to increase your current and max health by an additional 25% and give up to 4, 20v20/9, 40v40. Nearby friendly players' extra current and max health worth 5% of your maximum health at that moment, which lasts for 6 seconds. 5-minute CD reduced by 30 seconds for each nearby ally you benefit with this use. And you can only reduce this trinket CD by 2 minutes. If at the time that this effect expires you are above 80% health, you heal up to 4, 20v20, or 9, 40v40. Other friendly players 5% of their maximum health. 20 yards range. The Heart of Azeroth. The Heart of Azeroth and all the related essences will come back for this battle. The item level of the necklace will S-scale to your highest item level necklace in your bag. Arguably, this comes with the problem that not everyone has all the essences unlocked or even the basics. So to somewhat help with that, there are going to be some essences that will automatically become available while you remain in this scenario. Purification Protocol, Conflict and Strife, Spark of Inspiration, the Crucible of Flame, Sphere of Suppression, Artifice of Time, the Unbound Force, and Unwavering Ward. Keep in mind that all of the essences will be at rank 3 from default unless you have unlocked their last rank. Some expected questions you might have about this can be related to the inconvenience of not having the Heart of Azeroth with you, or even if someone did not play the BFA expansion, so they have not completed the necklace's questline. So we have 2 alternatives for this. One is to give players who didn't have the time or needs to go and complete the battle for Azeroth introduction, the Heart of Azeroth, for free, at least while inside the Warfronts. That would be lore inaccurate, but more friendly to new players. And the other alternative is to allow players to fight the battle for Stromgarde even without the Heart of Azeroth. That would be more lore accurate, but at the same time, it would create a disadvantage for some players. Now, of course, we have a dilemma here. Merit and effort against barriers and power levels. We don't want to ignore the fact that a vast majority of players did put a lot of effort and time into the game back in the battle for Azeroth expansion, so their efforts should be recognized if we bring the Heart of Azeroth back. But at the same time, there's already enough power level gap between players having a higher item level necklace and the essences unlocked, and the players who don't have a powerful Heart of Azeroth full of essences to choose. Let me know what would you prefer regarding this system within the Warfronts. And with that, we've come to the end of this video. Join me next time where we will talk about events and the player powers that will await you in the battle for Stromgarde. Have a good one, and I'll see you on Azeroth.